So we called back the, are we ready to call back the groups? Yeah, you go into the. It was, I think just as much Senior would have liked it. You know, he had everything planned out, not according to his plan, so. It was nice.
Did he write his obituary?
Yeah, he did.
He did? Oh, I'd love to have seen it sometime.
Oh, yeah, we should probably bring the appropriate, he just talked about it.
You made the program for the funeral?
Yes.
Now that's thinking ahead.
He's an engineer, so, you know. On the ball.
You know, in Japan, it was traditional for Buddhist monks to carry a little money on them.
You can mute some of the rooms as they come back. Welcome back, everybody. Just another couple 20 seconds or so. We should all be hopping back on. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your morning check-in with one another. All right. Well, without further ado, we'll get started with this morning's Dharma talk. I'm very pleased to have with us this morning our co-founder, Roshi, Joshin Robert Althouse, who will be speaking to us this morning, a Dharma talk entitled Dancing in the Apocalypse.
Morning, everyone. So good to see some very old, dear friends here today. Happy to have you here. So we're all happy.
We are. So let's start dancing, Robert. Let's go.
Boy, these people are really rearing to go.
Really?
I like that, a live audience. So good morning, everyone. I am giving a Teisho or Dharma talk this morning called Dancing in the Apocalypse. And I've been trying to write, usually I can order my thoughts and write them down with some clarity, and I have, but I'm not, I think I'm going to just wander a bit and see what comes up. So the first thing I always like to say when I give a talk here in Oak Park is that the land where we are was originally occupied by the Potawatomi, the Sauk Indians, and the Fox Indians, who are all related to the Ojibwe tribe, and many of them now are in Wisconsin, as I understand it, and they ceded these lands here, where we are today, to the English settlers around the 1830s. So, can we all agree that the world we are experiencing is a bit strange?
Yes.
Can we agree on that? It's hard to agree on anything anymore, but can we agree just that the world is a little strange? Do we go a little further and say there's some disconnect between how we think of the world and how we experience it? Is that possible?
Yes.
So far, so good. Let's see how far we can get. Could we agree that the world is not only strange, some people might say it's insane, but we probably wouldn't all have agreement there. We might go a little further, but some people would say I'm exaggerating when I say the world is dystopian. The world is dystopian. What's that mean? I don't know how, I think you're going to agree with me and I don't think I need to go very far before you will agree with me that the world is very strange that we're living in. There have been, I don't want to go too far, but I'll just say a few things that are obvious. We've had over 40 mass shootings in America this year. and the first month of January is not even complete. So we've had over more than 1.25 mass shootings a day. Isn't that a bit strange? And yet we have come to accept that as normal. So even when I say it, you might say, oh, that's not dystopian, that's just reality. Really? Do any other countries in the world experience mass shootings like we do in America? Okay. How about separating children from their parents when they come into our country? Is that not a bit dystopian? Brave New World? Isn't that strange? Why would we do that? Why would any country do that? And yet, maybe that's normal now. We have the highest rate of incarceration in any industrial country in the world. Many of these people of color, in prison for minor drug offenses. Do you remember the pictures of the town of Paradise in California after the fire swept through it? Was that not dystopian? Didn't that look a bit like an apocalypse? Towns where a hurricane goes through and you see how it levels everything. We have lived through a pandemic where thousands and thousands of people died. And yet, apparently, the stock market did really well during the pandemic. Isn't that some kind of disconnect? Isn't that strange? So I think you have to look at this word apocalypse, and it's we are living in apocalyptic times. And of course, the word apocalypse comes from the book of Revelations, the last book in the New Testament. And apocalypse means revelation. Now, when I say apocalypse, you might think of the rapture, because that's a common belief, also in America, by many evangelical Christians who believe that the apocalypse means that Christ is coming back, the second coming, and those who are believers in the faith of that form of Christianity will be saved, and they will rise majestically into the clouds, and the rest of us who are disbelievers will be left behind to slug it out in what's left over. Now, I'm not suggesting there's no talk about anything like that in the book of Revelations in the New Testament. So I'm not talking necessarily about the end of the world, although that's possible. It is actually possible. We could have a nuclear holocaust. We could, for the first time in our history, we have faced a global environmental crisis. We've never faced anything like that before, so that is a bit apocalyptic. So this may seem really depressing to be talking about the apocalypse. And well, it's not fun. I don't imagine, so how would we ever think of dancing in the apocalypse? So the apocalypse is cosmic in the sense that it could be the end of your worldview. If you're a Native American child and you were taken out of your family and put in a Christian school hundreds of miles away from your home, for you as that child, the world is apocalyptic, isn't it? So we're not necessarily speaking about the literal end of the world. We're speaking of a change which is cosmic, because we are cosmic. The cosmos is our worldview. And we are facing a moment, for some reason, where the way that we look at the world does not address the world that we're living in. So there's this disconnect. And we need the stories that we have to explain reality are not working. They're really not working. Capitalism, free markets, anyone hardly questions that. We can't even imagine what would be another economic system that wasn't based on greed and avarice and aggression and, you know. And yet, let's be clear, capitalism is not sustainable as an economic system. To have an economic system that's based on profit and no limits is not sustainable in the world we live in. It's just not possible. And yet, here we are. So, why am I talking about dancing and all of this? My experience of the Zen path that we are on is that Zen is a spiritual awakening. And, you know, we teach in a lot of different ways here at the Zen Center. In one way, we're often teaching about psychological development, ways to use mindfulness to address serious sufferings that we are experiencing now: grief, loss, trauma, depression, stress, anxiety. We can talk about mindfulness as a path of practice to address our everyday sufferings, and that's one way we talk about practice at the Zen Center. But let's be clear. What is the ultimate spiritual awakening that leads to liberation? Because that's what Zen, at least that's what we claim we are here for, is to be free. But what does that mean? What is that experience? One way of thinking about the apocalypse is we've come to a point where we're at a spatial and temporal edge and we can't go any further. We don't have the resources to go further. We don't have the technology to go further, and we're in gridlock. We're in magical thinking. We're in conspiracy theories. We no longer trust in the empirical evidence of our senses. That's a crisis. People are talking about the end of things all the time, the end of democracy, the end of this, the end of that. Unprecedented events. So why? How can we possibly dance in the midst of this? And I am actually suggesting that's what we're doing. We're dancing. Many ways to dance. You could dance with hallelujah. You could dance with a broken hallelujah. You could dance with a fist. Maybe we're dancing with all of those. So let me, to speak of this Zen, let me go back to Dogen, who is one of the teachers in our tradition that we value greatly for his wisdom and his writings, and the Genjo Koan. is one of those writings that we always go back to again and again because it is so profound as a spiritual teaching. And I'm not going to read the whole, I'm going to just, there's a pivotal image in the Genjo Koan about the mirror, which I'm going to read two different translations of. When we get a sense of what Dogen was talking about here. When he's speaking about the Genjo Koan, he's speaking about the ultimate reality that is here for all of us to experience and to, as a revelation that is not about our conventional notions of time and space. So perhaps Zen is relevant when we come to an edge of our spatial and temporal experience and we can't go any further. Maybe right there we could dance by not having a point of view, by giving up our frame of reference of trying to solve the problem or fix something out there. If the cosmos is coming to an end, we're coming to an end, and we've got nothing to lose. And at that point, there's a tipping point. And I'm going to read this passage, and I'm going to read two translations because Dogen is hard to translate. His language is difficult, and everyone has different interpretations of him as well. So this first one is a traditional translation from Robert Aiken and Kaz Tanahashi. Enlightenment is like the moon reflected on the water. The moon does not get wet, nor is the water broken. Although its light is wide and great, the moon is reflected even in a puddle an inch wide. The whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in dewdrops on the grass, or even in one drop of water. Enlightenment does not divide you, just as the moon does not break the water. You cannot hinder enlightenment, just as a drop of water does not hinder the moon in the sky. What are we to make of that? Poetic imagery, right? Very poetic. Let me read another translation, David Brazier, which I think in a way is a little more direct and maybe clear. A person's satori, and satori is a word in Zen for waking up, having a realization of oneself and reality. The cosmos is not outside of ourselves. We are the cosmos. And if the cosmos, anyway, so a person's satori is like the moon lodging in the water. The moon does not get wet and the water is not broken, but it is like a vast light lodging in the smallest bit of water. The whole moon and firmament, even in so much as a dewdrop on a blade of grass. Just as the moon does not pierce the water, so satori does not break the person. Just as the sky and moon and the dewdrop is no hindrance, so a person's satori is no impediment. You see, we can speak about psychological maturity and growth as a process of development, and it is. But if we're speaking about the ultimate realization of Zen, it is not a gradual process. When the water is transparent, you can see down to the bottom. And then at some point, when the water, beneath the water, it becomes dark, the water reflects as a mirror. That is not a gradual process. That is a tipping point. It comes to a point and it tips. It's outside of time. And Dogen is using this poetic metaphor to speak about what enlightenment is. He's actually trying to talk about something that we can't put into words. Enlightenment is not adding something on. It is not self-development. It is not self-improvement. Because really, from this point of view, nothing needs to be improved. Nothing can be improved. So, it's not any kind of accumulation of more knowledge. It's a self-effacement. In other words, when beneath the water becomes dark, that is the spiritual awakening, is the self becomes dark. We begin to trust what works in the dark. Now, we all like our perceptions and the way we try to understand the world, and we tend to, when we think about water, we would like it to be transparent. But I think Dogen would have it otherwise. Dogen is saying that the enlightenment is to see that the self that we always want to be seen doesn't exist in that way. Do you remember what it was like as a child when we played hide and go seek? Remember how thrilling and exciting it was when someone, you're hiding and you don't want to be seen, but then they see you and it's kind of exciting? Don't we all want to be seen like that? Don't we do Facebook and Instagram because we want to be seen? But this enlightenment is not about being seen in that way. There's nobody being seen because you are the seen. You are the world. You are the cosmos. We are one fabric. They say in Buddhism that the consciousness is luminous. The actual nature of our mind is luminous. And yet we don't appreciate that much of the time because we're filling up this mind with lots of stuff. Right? It's like, this is what's here. The Pure Land is here, right now. But we're looking somewhere else. It's like a candle burning right in front of it, and we get out a flashlight to try to look at it. That's absurd, but that's what we're doing. Trust what works in the dark. One of the things I like to remind people of is how Zen began, and I've told this quite a few times, but it's worth repeating. Because Zen, or the word for Zen in China was Chan. Chan was born in China in the Tang Dynasty. And he was born in times that were, if we actually look at the history, were apocalyptic to the Chinese, for sure. Because they had the the An Lushan Rebellion. The Chinese were a big empire. They had, as you know, a large border, and they had to protect their border. So they didn't have, apparently they couldn't get enough people of their own population to join the army. So they outsourced the army to Mongolians, you know, mercenaries. Don't we do that too? Didn't they hire mercenaries to fight our war in the Middle East? Anyway, they hired these Mongolians, and they came in and guarded the border. Then they would go home. And then eventually they came in and they didn't go home. They stayed. And they started a civil war. And this civil war lasted for a short time, relatively speaking, in terms of history, 10 years, a decade. And at the end of this war, if the history is right, over 2/3 of the population of the Chinese had died from war, murder, rape, disease, killing, hunger. Now, if that's not apocalyptic, I don't know what is. But what's really interesting about this is that Chan was born at this time in China by two great teachers. The first was Maozu Daoyi, whose line continued as the Rinzai line, of which we have a part of that line in our own white plum lineage. And then the second teacher was Shitao, Sekito Kisen. And both of these teachers were great. And his line became the Soto line, of which we are also a part. And why were these teachers great? First of all, they came from the margins of society. That's interesting. Maybe the new revelations and the new stories or myths that we get come from the margins, from the people that aren't close to the status quo. And these two teachers, they didn't talk about some enlightenment that was apart from that war. They walked through the war. They walked through those burnout, apocalyptic landscapes, burnt, smoking, dead bodies, grief, unimaginable suffering, like people do when we do bearing witness retreats at Auschwitz. We go and sit right in the middle of that place where unimaginable suffering took place. We do that. That's what we do in our practice. We bear witness. We sit right in the middle of the fire. That's our practice. So these two teachers were these big Zen teachers, and it was the golden age of Zen. And what they taught was look at the world as it is. See it. See the suffering. And see that the world as it is this is the world we are in. And there was a kind of urgency about their teaching. They said, you don't have time to figure out who you are. You don't have time to do that. We don't have time. There's an urgency here. Wake up. Now. What are you waiting for? And one teacher in the Rinzai tradition, he had more extreme way of teaching, shouting and hitting people. And Sekito's Soto way of teaching was much more gentle, but equally as challenging to anyone that came to him. Someone would say, why can't I wake up? And Sekito would say to the person, what's stopping you? Who's stopping you from waking up? So Rinzai said, upon entering one of the three destinies you fall into the hell denizen, as though strolling in a pleasure garden. Where is the Pure Land? So when we live in a time of such insanity, where what is normal is not normal, and what is not normal is normal, and it's hard to get our bearings, it's time to wake up. Now, it's time to wake up. So we need another story. We need better stories. We need, Joseph Campbell was talking about this when 30, 40 years ago. We need a new myth. And, it was the beginning of it when we started seeing pictures of the Earth from outer space. It was the beginning of a new myth. June, Roshi, and I just watched Avatar. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's pretty good. I won't tell you how it ends, but the ending is really quite marvelous. But that's still kind of a myth of going back to the indigenous culture, and I don't think we can go back in that way. So, who are you? Here. You can't go forward. You can't go back. What can you say? Yeah. We have a poem in our tradition that says, "What's your original face before your parents were born?" And if you think about it, you're already lost. You get logical about that, and you're just like stumped. That doesn't make any sense. Well, but our world doesn't make any sense either. Stop making sense. Diane, isn't there one of the slogans, stop being so predictable? Isn't there a slogan like that? How's that go?
It's not coming to me at the top of my head.
Okay. Something like that. Don't be so predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apocalypse means revelation. Apocalypse means when we come to the end of what we can find meaning in, to the story we're telling, when the stories our culture gives us do not fit what we are experiencing, we have to find a new story. I always go back to Taoism for a pretty good story. Not bad. I had the good fortune to study with someone to learn about early Chinese medicine, and I was really surprised at how deep the ancient Chinese philosophy was, and how they observed the world around them. They were natural empiricists, and they were very observant. And the Chinese see everything in the world as a pattern of change. They don't see things. They would say that the world starts with nothing. And then out of this nothing, there is a motion pushing out, yang. And then it gets to a certain extension, and then it comes back, yin. And that movement in yang and yin creates the fabric of our world, and they call it qi. And instead of using words like energy and matter, which are a Western way of thinking about things, they would say this qi is intangible or tangible. When we see form, it's tangible qi, but most of it is intangible. Most of it we don't see. And this movement, the breath of the world, the universe is nothing but breath. This motion of coming and going, swinging, going out, coming back. We are made of stars. Our bodies are the stuff of stars. And how big is the cosmos? If we are the cosmos, how big are we? But we often feel small, and then when we're small in this way, we can't dance. We get paralyzed, we get frozen in fear, frozen in fear. So that when the movement of patterns of yin and yang are in balance, it creates this tangible qi. And the word for that in Chinese, I have it written down here somewhere, but they translate as illuminated something. Organized illumination. That's how they see form. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, that's amazing. So, in the Chinese way, again, the Tao Te Ching is, I really love Taoism. I think it's a big story. It's not a bad story to say there's two kinds of transformation. There's Hua, it's Bien. There's transformation, which is the positive transformation that we all like. Growth, development, learning, something new. We all like that. And then there's the other. There's the Hua transformation, which is a disruption, when everything breaks down. We don't like that. Who likes that? And yet, without things breaking down, nothing new can come. Our bodies have Hua transformation. You have to break down your food so that it will be a source of nutrients to your body. That's Hua transformation. So the world we're living in is that movement of growth and life and death, growth and decay, order and chaos. Isn't that the dance? Broken, hallelujah. I saw I don't know if it's recent or what, I just watched a documentary on Leonard Cohen yesterday, and it was really moving. What a spiritual person he was, what a poet. And the concerts when he sang, hallelujah, it's like a prayer. It's a new kind of prayer, though. It wasn't just religious, it was sexual. It was sexual, but it was a prayer. Really. He spoke to people, and people in those concerts felt like they were at church. That's the story we need. Maybe we need ritual. We do ritual here. Not many people like to come, but we do it. And we're going to do a ritual next week. We're going to feed the hungry ghosts next week. I'm not sure I have a whole lot more to say, but I think if we're going to appreciate a genuine spiritual awakening, as we claim to have in Zen, then this awakening is about seeing what's here and seeing who we are here. We are not things. We are not a thing. And it's beyond words, isn't it? We need poets like Leonard Cohen to point at it. But we have enough people who have had this experience, which is, even say it's an experience is a little tricky, that we could have some faith that there's a wisdom tradition here which is speaking to our times, which would allow us to be here fully without being broken down, without being taken down, to be with suffering, with some equanimity, with compassion, with the whole range of emotions that are available to us as human beings. But we're not standing above this with some superiority because we realize something that is apart from the suffering that we are experiencing. Enlightenment is delusion. The Genjo Koan includes everything. This awakening, nothing is excluded. It's not enlightenment in delusion. It's Genjo Koan of delusion, Genjo Koan of enlightenment, Genjo Koan of the apocalypse, Genjo Koan of hallelujah, Genjo Koan of grief and loss and trauma. And our practice, I think, and why it's relevant, and why I hope that this Dharma continues throughout the world, is that it gives us a way to be here that is resilient and helpful. And we can show up and sit in the middle of the fire and function. But I do think we need to sit in the fire. You can't just do this with your will. It's because if you do it that way, you're going to add on something. You're going to accumulate something else. And this is a taking away. It's a stripping away. It's a letting go. It's a unlearning. It's not adding something. It's a self-effacement. When the water is dark underneath, then the world we see is a pure land. It's sacred. And we are part of this. So that's probably enough words for one morning. Maybe we could have a little discussion about this. Anything you want to say? Questions?
Anyone online, feel free to unmute. I have the microphone here for anyone in person. Any comments, questions, thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
That was so powerful, Roshi. I almost don't know what to say. So powerful. I just want to share an old joke, an old chestnut.
Yeah.
What does the Buddhist say about the apocalypse? Non-judgment day is coming. Non-judgment day is coming.
That's a good one. I haven't heard that.
Perfectly timed, Sky.
Ruth? Yeah, Ruth has something to say.
That's really hard to do, Robert,
What's hard to do?
to sit in the
Oh,
middle
yeah.
of the
Yeah,
fight.
this is not easy.
I honestly don't know how to do it and feel like I'm functioning in a way that is beneficial. And I guess I still have a belief that I should, or I would like to feel that I was, doing what I could to create good.
Haven't you been doing this all your life?
Creating good?
Yeah.
What's getting harder?
Well, yeah, we're getting older. We can't function. You did all that hospice work?
Well, it just seems, I came to learn how to dance in the apocalypse. And it seems to me, Robert, that what you said was, we already are dancing in the apocalypse, and we might just as well recognize it and embrace it.
Yeah, there's many ways of dancing. I'm practically immobile now. I really have a hip operation. June Roshi dances. I'm not talking about just that dance. I'm talking about the dance you're doing.
Right. And I'm going to say the quote of Ram Dass that I've said many times, but I'm going to say it again because maybe somebody online hasn't heard it from me. But it was a weekend with Ram Dass many years ago, and it's many years ago because of the question. Because the question to him was, I just don't know if this is the beginning of the Aquarian age, which is why it was asked a long time ago, is this the beginning of the Aquarian age or is it the apocalypse? And he said, I don't know, and it doesn't matter to me. He said, if this is the beginning of the Aquarian age, what I want to do is open my heart, quiet my mind, and do what I can to address suffering. And if this is the apocalypse, what I want to do is open my heart, quiet my mind, and do what I can to address suffering.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time,
The vow doesn't change, whether it's the beginning or the end. But it's worth talking about this because we are living in these disruptive times and we're all experiencing trauma on various levels. I think that's real. The suffering is real and it's extensive. And we're all affected by it. We're all co-regulating with each other. And so, and we have things to do that are skillful psychologically, the ways of being with people with kindness and compassion that are important, of being of service. But it's also important to get that who we are at this moment is just fine. it's more than enough. That's what allows us to keep going. If we didn't have this truth in the ultimate sense, we'd get burned out really quickly. That vow would not be sustainable. If we have this truth but we don't act on it, then it's not particularly important. I have a New Year's resolution, believe it or not. I keep telling people because I kind of like it. I'm okay with cracking a few eggs. I live a complicated life. My life is complicated now. I'm doing all kinds of things, and I make mistakes every day. And I'm okay with making mistakes. I'm okay with cracking a few eggs. Yeah, I'm so much. Most of the time, I'm nicer to my wife as a result, but not always. Any other questions or thoughts?
Roshi, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate your wisdom and the guidance that you have given us. That's it. Just thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Okay, I think that's enough for this morning then. Are we having a kinship hour?
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
So thank you to those of you online who have joined us today. It's so good to see all of you. Those of you in person, please feel free to hang around and enjoy some snacks and share in fellowship with us for kinship hour. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Sandy. Good luck, Sandy. He had an eye operation. He had melanoma in his eye, and he's gone into the hospital, and they put a little nuclear thing, a little disc over the spot. And he had the operation last week, Friday or Thursday, and he's in the hospital now, and they remove it tomorrow, and it takes out the melanoma. And so far, it's been successful for him. It's a new, 10 years ago, they would have just taken the eye out. So, yeah. Yeah.